it's apropos. I was just thinking about this, that we started this morning with Dr. Phil Millhouse, and we're ending with Cloris Lowe, President Cloris Lowe. And the reason I think it's apropos that we've bookended this with these two men is because if I had to pick two people who have influenced our work at Joe Davis Conservation Foundation the most in this area of Native American heritage and in understanding that, those two people would be Dr. Phil Millhouse and President Cloris Lowe. Dr. Phil Millhouse on the scientific archaeological side, and President Lowe on the cultural side, kind of anchoring those two ways of knowing that we've been featuring here today. So President Lowe served 2 terms as the president of the Ho-Chunk Nation in the 90s, and he now runs his own consulting business. He works within Indian country to consult with tribal groups on non-gaming profit centers. So how can tribal people look at creating economic development on their tribal lands, and how can they do that in ways other than gaming? And he's been doing this across the country. He also served for many years with the Smithsonian Museum and Institute in Washington, D.C., and he had the distinct honor of, after NAGPRA was introduced, Native American Graves Repatriation Act, of taking collections, human remains, that were in the Smithsonian collection and repatriating those to tribal groups across the Americas, Canada, North America, Central America, and South America. And so he's had a really unique opportunity to see and experience the different ceremonies and rituals of returning remains to their homeland and to their ultimate resting place. So today he's going to be talking to us about regalia and ceremony, and he did this with our camp Casper kids this summer. And one of the things I was so taken with is how the kids responded to this, but even more so in some cases, how the adults that were in the group responded to his presentation. So please join me in welcoming President Cloris Lowe.
I think I'll take this.
All right.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
So there are a lot of friendly faces in this group today, for me. People who I've met before, but there are also a lot of people who I have not met previous to today. So for those of you who have heard me speak before, the first few minutes may be a bit of a repetition, but it is something that I need to do just because it's the right thing to do. And that is that I have been taught by my great-grandfather, who lived to be almost 103. He passed away just a couple of weeks short of that when I was a sophomore in college a lot of years ago. By my grandfather and also by my father. And that's this, that I stand here today and I ask for your forgiveness, sincerely. I ask for your forgiveness. And I apologize if at all, during the time that we're together here today, that I happen to offend you. And please be certain that it's it's not intended. It is something, though, that may happen because of the subject matter that we're about to delve into. It's spiritual in nature. It deals directly with the belief system. It deals directly with what I believe in. And I believe that some of you share parts of, or perhaps even all, of what I believe. I do not know your ethnicities and where your family what your family background is, what you believe in, what churches that you may belong to. And so therefore, that's why I ask for your forgiveness if I challenge any of that. And it's certainly not meant overtly. So, and I apologize in advance. My Ho-Chunk name, translated, is Walks on Men. I am a member of the Sky Clan and the Thunderbird Clan. It's something that those of you that have looked at some of the material that I brought here today, you'll see Thunderbirds over and over and over there. And that's the reason why it's there. It's part of who I am. Chief Rhodes and I spoke earlier about how we communicate with people who we haven't met before, other native cultures throughout the Americas. And I've had that great opportunity to do so. And that communication was some of the most difficult that I have ever encountered in my entire life. Because many times I was speaking with spiritual leaders who did not even speak English. There are over 5,500 cultures here in the Americas, from the Arctic Circle to the southern tip of South America, Tierra del Fuego. Over 5,500 Native American cultures. And almost exclusively, with rare exception, all of these people have their own language. And so consequently, there were many times when I spoke with spiritual leaders from other nations, I was having to work through one or more interpreters. And we'll talk about that a little bit later too. One of the things that I have to go through is, this is a 3.5-hour story that I'm going to try to condense to about 5 minutes. So that means there's a little bit left out. And it deals with the understanding of creation in traditional Native American belief system within all these cultures. They're not exactly the same, but there are so many parallels, there are so many points that are the same. And so, in my consolidation of this 3.5-hour story into a few minutes here, it's important I do this because before I take the next step to talk about the spirituality of what we wear and have worn in the past, I want you to have at least a little exposure to the belief. And the belief is this: everything has a life and a spirit. Everything. There is nothing inanimate in this world. Nothing. Everything that we have today comes from this earth. Everything. The clothes we have on, the vehicles we drove here today, the building we're in right now. Everything comes from this earth. Now, having said that, in the original, I'm going to speak now for Ho-Chunk, and I'm going to speak now for my clan, for the Thunderbird clan. I'm not going to set somebody else up out there and talk about them. I'm going to talk about me. I'm going to talk about my clan, my tribe. So just the 7,700 people on this earth that are in my tribe, they're the only ones that get to criticize me. So, in the beginning, there were two creations. In the first creation, the Creator created the world and all the beings in this world. All of these beings did not include women or men. Human beings were not included in the first creation. But rather, all of what we now today look at as the four-leggeds on the earth, the birds of the air, those of the water, all of these beings were in the first creation. And they had the same abilities that we have today. They had the ability to be able to speak to one another. They were in a community where they didn't have to hunt one another. Everything was given to them. Kind of like Moses in the desert. Manna for 40 years. Everything was given to them. And this society worked as a family unit. And at the end of every day, they would have a meeting of the Grand Council. And all of these beings could communicate to one another. And at the end of the day, each of them would stand and say, this is what I did today. This is what I did for our family. This is what I did for our society. And each of them would stand and they would deliver on what they had done that day. Over a long period of time, it started to break down a little bit, and then a little bit more. And so these grand councils at the end of the day became a little more divisive, and then a lot more divisive. And I'll use my own clan. Let's say the eagle. The eagle will stand up in front of the Grand Council at the end of the day and say, well, I don't know what you did today, but I did something you couldn't do. I think I'm a little better than you, ruffle his feathers. I can look into the future. I can see what is over the top of the mountains. I can see what's coming to us. I'm better than you are. And each of these beings started to do the same thing. And they became more critical of everyone around them, and certainly less so themselves. With one exception. The turtle. The low, slow, not so good looking little being on the earth. And the turtle would not stand up and talk about what they had done today that was so much better than everybody else. These beings began to fight between themselves. And the Creator, looking down, said, this is not the world that I had wanted. And ultimately, because of all the infighting and divisiveness and the pointing of how much better I am than all of you here, and all the reasons why, and every one of you standing up if you're one of these beings and doing the same thing to everybody else in the room, the Creator decided to destroy the earth. Sent a great flood. You've heard that before, right? Sent a great flood that literally covered the earth, the entire earth, and even the great eagle, who could fly farther, see farther. Even the great eagle had no place to land and ultimately drowned in this sea. Nothing lived through this destruction. After an undetermined period of time, many, many, many moons, the earth settled down. The waters still covered the entire earth, but it became like a mirror on the surface of the earth. These raging oceans and seas, it became quiet. There wasn't a ripple on any of this water on the surface of the earth. And the Creator decided to recreate the beings on this earth and to recreate the earth. And the Creator called out for clay from the bottom of this majestic sea that was like a mirror. And from the bottom of this huge sea, there was a ripple that started out, and it went all over the world. This ripple was caused by this clay mound coming up off the bottom of the sea on the back of the turtle. The one being that the Creator had allowed to live. The one being that had lived as it was taught to live. And with that clay, the Creator recreated all of these beings again on the face of this earth. But penalized them. Took away their ability to speak to one another. They didn't live in this society anymore where they were in complete agreement. They are all moving in the same direction. No more. Now there was a pecking order. They had to hunt one another to live. As I said, they couldn't speak to one another as they used to. It was a penalty because of how they had not lived the life they were given to start. The Creator then created woman and man. Gave woman and man the gift of life. Also gave woman and man the gift of the story of what had happened. Gave them this understanding that all of these beings were at one time were just like they are today. But because of how they had lived, they were no longer that way. But they are your brothers and your sisters. All these four-leggeds, all of these birds of the air, they are your brothers and sisters. You are the caretakers for them. And that's how the second creation occurred. And with that creation, there were four spirits that were given to man and a woman. watched over this world. They became the four spirits, the four directions. These spirits, however, could not touch the earth. They could not touch the earth. And then the Creator created a need within these four spirits. Not a want, not a desire, but a need for some elements. Tobacco and sage and other medicines of the earth, which the Creator gave to man and woman and explained to them, here is what you do and use to bring these four spirits into play, to answer your prayers, to help you with your life. Now, Hollywood, in the movies, they got one thing right about the Indians. They didn't know it was a mistake. I always tell people this. This was a mistake. They stumbled onto it. But every Western you've ever seen with every Indian, they've got this pipe out, and this guy's standing up there, and he's going to the four directions. It looks great. Nobody's ever explained why they're doing this. Okay? I don't know where they got it, but they stumbled onto something, and I think that's helped Indian country more than we'll ever know from a public relations perspective. So, these spirits are there, and that's why you see in Indian country yet today, traditional Native American people will utilize tobacco and other medicines from the earth to bring these spirits into play. And there's many other spirits, but the four primary ones have other spirits that kind of work for them also. But the key point in this, it's not a story. This is the creation, as we understand it in the Thunderbird clan, as I understand it within my clan and my nation. It has some great parallels with most other tribes within this entire hemisphere. I had a little man tell me this story who had never left the Amazon River Basin when I worked with the Smithsonian. He started in Salt through two interpreters. I didn't have the heart to tell him I had heard this story at Hopi. I had heard this story in the Arctic Circle. I had heard this story in other parts of the Americas. But he had a physical stature that was just a little over 5 feet. But the stature that he carried in his heart, spiritually, was a giant. And so for 3.5 hours, I listened to his story through these two interpreters. But the story was the same. Two things to remember. All these beings are your brothers and sisters. And the other thing to remember is, we all come from the same parents. We are all brothers and sisters on this earth. Regardless of your color, regardless of your belief system, regardless of your language, we're brothers and sisters. You don't hear that a lot in Indian country. But I have heard it over and over again from different spiritual leaders from different nations. They tell you in different ways. They explain it in different ways. But ultimately, that's what you come down to. So, thank you for those of you who have heard this story before and sitting through it. But it's important for me to convey to you that everything has a life and a spirit. There are no inanimate objects. We're all brothers and sisters. Now, having said that, what in the world has that got to do with regalia? What's that got to do with what we wear? You ever been to a powwow? How many of you have been to a powwow? I mean, oh, wonderful, great, most of you. is a public gathering. It is a time for people to gather from all over this world, from this society to be called the United States. Red and white and black and yellow, and you take all the other colors and mix them in. That's what powwows are all about. It's a gathering of people. It's a gathering of family. It's fun. It's dancing. It can be storytelling and much more. So, understand that when you gather with people like this, that you're gathering with your family. It's not like a 3-day Thanksgiving where it gets a little bit too long, you know? Your close family stayed an extra day too long. It's not like that. It's hard to leave a good powwow. It really is. Kay smiling over here. So, you look at Native American dancers at the powwows, some of this is done for show. The fancy dancers in particular. But look at the traditional dancers of all the various nations that we have, of the 5,500 we know about. We'll never get to see all these people, but you get to see a few cultures. What people are wearing when they dance traditionally goes right to the heart and core and the belief of the understanding of who we are and the relationship that we have to the rest of this landscape. Thunderbird Clan. I'm going to use myself as an example. If I use Kay, she'll come after me. I'll use myself as an example. So Thunderbird Clan, Sky Clan. If you take a look at even what I have in this small display over here, which comes from the house that Chris and I have and a collection that we've put together over the years. This material represents something more than, wow, that's great. It's something more than eye candy. It's a lot more than eye candy. Sky Clan. Look at the eagle feathers that I have. I am a caretaker for that brother or that sister that provided those feathers. When I place that on my head, I feel something that is powerful. There's no other way of saying it. I feel differently. Why? Because that is a brother or sister, and I am caring for them. That is not an inanimate object, those feathers. That is not. When you take a look at what traditional dancers wear, and now we're just talking dancers, but let's move on and take another step closer and take a look at the medicine lodge. Take a look at the traditional religion that exists within the clan system of nations throughout the Americas. What's worn there is really the heart and soul of who you are as an individual. The clothing contains many times pellets. When you take a look at some of the old pictures, and I know Kay and I have been fortunate enough, and perhaps some of you have also been fortunate enough to see the actual clothing items, historic clothing items. The power that is in those clothing items is unbelievable. Why? Because you will see clothing items that have all kinds of ermine, that white pelt. It's really the winter weasel. In the summer, it's brown. In the winter, it turns white. Has a little black tail, brown black tail on it. It has been called one of the most vicious fighters, warriors in the animal kingdom. This little animal that can be no more than 12 inches long in some cases has been seen fighting grizzly bears. They're not going to win. Okay? But they're warriors. That brother and that sister was a warrior. And that's why you will see on many of these historic pieces of clothing many, many different pelts. Because of that. Because that spirit is there. It's there yet. And as a warrior of old, these pelts carried power. It showed everybody that you went into battle with who you were. And the more of these you had on, the more power you carried. Now let's go to the Dog Soldier Society. I am taking leaps and bounds here, but I need to have you, I think we're going with the pathway here so you can understand. The Dog Soldier Society. How many people have ever heard of the Dog Soldier Society? Okay, a few of you. Unique group. Small. As far as warriors are concerned, in Ho-Chunk, we call them the bravest of the brave. The bravest of the brave. Dog Soldier Society, primarily when you look at the Cheyenne, are absolutely fearsome. They existed at a time on the plains when there were only 5, no more than 6 men that belonged to this society at any one time. These were the bravest of the brave. They, like many warriors throughout time, and even to today, in our society at Ho-Chunk, we have war bundles that our young men bring back to the battlefield yet today that have been added to and are still added to. Bring back parts of our enemy. We are a warrior society. And that gets added to these bundles. Why? It's strength. You have taken the strength. You own your enemy when you have conquered them on the battlefield. I have seen Dog Soldier Society shirts, war shirts, that have had as many as 56 scalps on them. That means they have conquered 56 men, other warriors, on the field of battle. They don't wear this as a medal. They wear it because they hold now the spirit of all those fighting men that they beat on the field of battle. Now, put yourself in a position of being with another group out on the plains somewhere or in some other environment, and you're you're thinking about going into battle with this group, you may outnumber them. Think about this. You look down and you go, we can beat them. We have to move these people out. And then something happens. Out of this group of people comes a man who walks out into the middle of the field that will be the battlefield. And they stake themselves to the ground on a tether that's probably no longer than 10 feet. And they're wearing this Dog Soldier Society shirt. And you look at them, if you believe in medicine, if you believe in strength, if you believe you're a warrior, take a look at what you're wearing. Here is a person who's standing out there in the middle of the field that's telling you to win, you have to kill me. It's been tried many times before. Are you thinking truly, when you think about spirits now, you think about strength, do you really believe you're going to beat this guy? I don't care how many men you have. Here's a man that's fought on the field of battle and has conquered all these other men, all these other warriors. And the stories that I've been told is that many times battles were not fought because of these dog soldiers. When they pinned themselves to the ground, the only time that they could be released from that was by another dog soldier or if the enemy left the field of battle. Once they staked themselves down, they were there. You were going to have to kill them. And these Dog Soldier Society shirts, I think, for what our discussion and what we're talking about today, it emblemizes, it represents what the spirit that we have when we take a look at what you might consider to be inanimate objects, just pelts. It's just hair. No, it's not. It's all that spirit. It's part of who we are. Now, you might go, poo-poo that a little bit. I'm going to draw a parallel for you. I am willing to bet that almost every one of you in your homes has a special place. A shelf, a glass cabinet, a curio cabinet, a special room maybe even. I know some of my friends down here have those rooms. And you go into those rooms and there's certain things in there that you have kept over the course of your life, that you have collected, that have been given to you. They're special. Like I say, sometimes they're so special they might be locked inside of a cabinet, a glass cabinet, something you look at. It's something that's maybe given to you by a friend, a relative, somebody close, maybe your parents, your grandparents, maybe a son or daughter, a mother or father. I don't know what it is. You men, I like to use the example, maybe it's a rifle that your grandfather had, or your father had, or your brother had, but now it's yours. You are the caretaker of that. Maybe it's a piece of jewelry that's been handed down to you by your grandmother. If you're lucky, your great-grandmother. Maybe it's something that's been made by a grandparent that's been handed down through the family, if you're really lucky. But I am willing to bet that in each and every one of your homes, there is a special something in a special place. It's not something you pick up every day. It's not something you might not even look at every day. But when you do, when you allow yourself to go and reach up on that shelf, open that curio cabinet door, reach in and pick that item up, whatever that is, large or small, and you hold that in your hands, there is a special feeling, a connection to the past that you have. That's a power. That's the spirit I'm talking about. Someone had something and used it during their lifetime, and a part of their life and a part of their spirit went into that physical item. It is living. It is not inanimate. You feel better when you pick that up. Good medicine. That's what that is. It's good medicine. Powerful medicine. It's a part of who you are. Now, if you can transpose that back into Indian country, into traditional Native American belief system, when you take a look at what people are wearing, and now you look at that warrior that they told me about, and there were dog soldier societies on the plains. There's several examples of those war shirts at the Smithsonian, at the National Museum of American Indian. They're rare, but they're there. Those are powerful. I would not want to even think about challenging anybody that was wearing that shirt. That was their shirt. I don't care who you are. You wouldn't go out there. Maybe you'd be number 58. Probably a pretty good chance of that. So when you take a look at what traditional Native American people wear today and in the past, understand that those items that might look pretty, that might look like I call eye candy, take a look at what's being worn. I can probably, not all the time, but in most instances, if I look at someone who's doing a traditional ceremony and I take a look at what they're wearing, I have a very, very good idea of what clan they're from. It's amazing what you can learn just by observing, just by watching what people wear. Take a look at this roach. There's a headpiece back here opposite the feathered headdress that I have back there. It's on the other side. You take a look at it, we're done here. That is a roach. It's called a roach. It's traditional headwear of woodland Indians up in here in the upper portions of the United States, across the Great Lakes area and over into New York. It's made out of porcupine quill, actually guard hairs from a porcupine. And it's also, the edges of it is white. It's white tail deer hair. I look at that, and I use that for dancing, and I think to myself, okay, so I feel a little slow today, but I'm going to put this on, and I think about that white-tailed deer, who's anything but slow. And when I have that on, I feel differently about that, just like I do with the other headdress. There's other items that people wear. If you take a look at them, that life and that spirit is there. They're not inanimate, is what I'm saying. When we talk about the Dog Soldier Society, that's just one example. All warriors, men and women, and yes, there were women warriors. What they wore and took into the field of battle and returned with was something that they kept. It happens yet today. It's still occurring yet today. So, an example of just something more than just symbolism, back here on the display for this is the first time I've ever brought this out of my home, that Chris and I have. There's a vest. There's a beaded vest there. It's got a white background that has blue, looks like X's on it. Those X's represent Thunderbirds. That's the same type of symbol that you see carved into the surfaces of caves and rock shelters here in the upper Mississippi River Valley and in the Wisconsin River Valley, and painted on the walls. And you see that same symbol all the way out into the Southwest. When I see that, that's a Thunderbird. That means something special to me. And every one of the clans from every nation that I know of have a similar type of symbolism. You might call it symbolism. It's a certain type of, this is a sign. This is who we are. Spiritual. It's a part of what people live every day. Not just on Sundays, and not on Saturdays. Live it every day. And that is an understanding of what traditional Native American people have of our place on the landscape. That's what everybody's been talking about here today. Is this landscape? This is not a dead, inanimate landscape that lies out here just south of town. The life and the spirit of all the people that have ever crossed this landscape resides here in Park. None of us today are ever going to be different, ever be the same again. We interact at different levels. I'll never be the same after having that cheap roads. I don't know what that means, but I know I'm not going to be the same. Nor am I going to be the same having met any of you here today. Because we change. It's a part of who we are. Is that our ability to interact with people is what's supremely important. It's who we are as beings here on this earth. And understanding that we're brothers and we're sisters, and that life and that spirit that we have does not die. The body might die, ashes to ashes and dust to dust, and return to the earth. But the life and the spirit has a continuum. As I tell people, don't talk to me about the circle of life like it's a clock. It starts at noon, and by 6 o'clock you're really rocking and rolling. By 9 o'clock you're starting to slow down, and at midnight you're gone. That's not the cycle of life. The cycle of life is a helix. Our body may die, but the life continues. The spirit continues. It lives on through your family. It lives on through your friends. It lives on through your neighbors. It lives on in people that you don't even know that you've had an effect on in your entire life. That's who we are as a people on the face of this landscape. And I honestly believe that Native American people have a better understanding of that than most other cultures in the world. It's a richness. You have it here all around you. I can feel it within JDCF. I'm not overstating this. The organization itself gives me vitality. It gives me some strength. It gives me an understanding of who we are as a people. The fact that you're sitting here this late in the day after having started here at 8:30 in the morning just absolutely amazes me. Seriously. You're to be congratulated. I think actually Steve put me on at the end because I don't have to stop, do I, Steve? Okay. So what I'd like to do now, I've got just a few minutes, I'd be willing to take any question that you have. Anything at all. There isn't, as I tell people when I speak with them in environments like this, that there isn't anything that you can ask me that's going to offend me. Nothing. Chief Rhodes know this. You know, I always say this, Chief, because of being involved in the politics of my nation, more than once, like somebody else I know, okay, my skin goes, it's this thick. It starts on this side of my wrist, and it goes over to here. I've got really thick skin. But in here, I'm with friends. And the questions you have are really important to me. If I can answer them, I will. In a lot of cases, I can't. But I want you to feel completely and totally free to ask anything at all. It's not going to offend me. And in that asking, we're going to all be educated by it.
Does your necklace mean anything?
No. I like to wear it. It's something that I made. It's made out of, I wish I could say that this was, you know, some exotic bone from some animal. It comes from a cow. Okay, this is glass. But, in terms of what it actually means, understanding what you're wearing is important. Understanding it's a part of who we are in this world. And yes, it's something that I've been given. This is a gift to me. Everything I have is a gift. In that respect, yes. But in terms of something that's really highly spiritual, no. It looks, I hope, decent.
Getting back to your philosophy, you view each of us, all of us, as brothers and sisters, correct? And we each have studied our heritage, whether it be a Native American tribe or a European family claim. Going forward, what is your view? Is it one of all cultures blending into one way into the future? Or is it maintaining those separate cultures?
You thought that was going to be hard, didn't you? Part of this 3.5 hour creation story addresses exactly that. And I just couldn't, you can't tell everything in 5 to 7 minutes in the 3.5 hour creation story. Part of this story deals with peace on earth. Part of this story is that particular portion. It's all very important, but this particular, because of your question, I think this will address that. And again, I'm going to really summarize that. Now, pausing as I'm trying to put that, trying to tighten this down. I'll go back to the gentleman in the Amazon River Basin. Part of what he told me was, here's who we are. We're all brothers and sisters. Okay? And he also explains as part of his creation story, as part of my creation story, is that at one time, after the second creation, families started to do what the creatures did in the first creation. They started to fight amongst themselves. They started to hold themselves higher than other people. They started to be critical of everyone around them. And the Creator took this population of men and women and divided them into 4 pieces and set them on the 4 corners of the world. And in doing so, also gave each one of them a discipline to understand. And said, only when you have understood these 4 disciplines will you be allowed to come together again. And only then will there be peace on this earth. True peace. One of these disciplines, I'll give you an example, was fire. Think of fire. Think of heat. Think of atomic energy. Think of destructive forces. Think of gunpowder. Think of all the weapons we have. And this physically little man in the Amazon River Basin looked at me and said, don't you understand that gathering place is where you live? He's talking about the United States. I understand that there are people from all over the world that make up your country. People from all over this world want to come to your country. Don't you understand it's the gathering place? In 1998, he's talking to me. And what he said next, which is probably drop you on the floor. Why are you keeping the people out of the gathering place? Think about that. Think about that. 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, he's asking me this question that we still have to ask ourselves yet today. If this is the gathering place, what are we doing? That's the best answer I can give you from what I know to your question.
Just so I can quote you more inaccurately now. And this kind of came around with my question, but you've had this wonderful opportunity to talk with people all over the Americas about creation stories. How did that change you? And also, were there any interesting twists that you heard throughout this whole process that you just thought were really, really interesting? That'll take you 3 minutes.
The process of my conversation with this gentleman?
No, in talking to all these people about their creation stories, how did it change you?
Understand the creation stories there are lines of continuum that runs through this creation story that I have given you, which is so abbreviated, that applies, and I'm sure Kay has heard some parallels to this from other nations throughout the Americas. So it's not a stand-alone creation story. We have 12 clans in the Ho-Chunk Nation. All 12 of us have our own creation story. So if you ask somebody from Ho-Chunk, what's your creation story? the first thing you should be asking is, what clan do you belong to? And then they'll tell you a creation story that's from their clan. But that creation story actually knits itself together with all of the clans, because that's who we then become. Each of us arrived here perhaps at a different place and a different time and for a different reason. But we become this one people. I hope you can wrap your mind around that a little bit. I forgot the first part of your question.
After hearing all these stories, the creation stories from all these different people, how did that change you?
So after hearing all of these different creation stories, and again, there's a lot of parallels here. There's a lot of similarities. There's what I call lines of continuum, threads of continuum that run through all of this. They're the same. But how does it change me? And how did it change me? It's still changing me yet today. My belief system, from what I have seen in Indian country, my initial belief system, I was brought up in a church. I was brought up in a German Lutheran church, which means I was one step away from being a Catholic. Okay? I was confirmed in that church. I did learn a lot from that. But my time in Indian country, which started when I was a small child, with my grandmother, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather, has changed me entirely. What I have talked to you about today is what I believe in, because what I have seen and what I have watched other people live in their lives. I believe each and every one of you here in this room, you are my brothers and sisters, and I say that sincerely. I truly, truly say that sincerely. I believe that the world that we live in is a world that we can change. We've already done that. Sometimes not so well. But we've made some good things too. Don't think this is necessarily a nasty world that we live in. It's within our ability to handle this. What it's done for me, I believe, has made me a better person, a better understanding of where I sit on this landscape. It gives me a better understanding of how I might be able to help my friends, my tribal members, anybody that I might come in contact with and might have something valuable to share or do or give. That's a short answer to your question, but I honestly feel that way. And I don't have really any answers. I just know what I've seen, I understand what I believe, and I have seen things physically that I cannot explain. I have watched and I have taken people back on the journey. I have placed people back into this earth. Some of them, members of your community, and most of you probably aren't even aware of that. It's a richness, a gift that I have been given to be able to have this understanding. I have to stop there. Thank you.